Hey everybody, I'm glad to have you
Hey.
here. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a minute. I overheard, well, I kind of saw April tweeting about this just the other day, and I was like, "Yo, I really want to talk about that." We were talking about patriarchy and how it does harm the men who even participate in it. If y'all don't know April's Dr. Scott, I will let her introduce herself. Tell them who you are.
Hello, y'all. I'm Dr. April Scott. Y'all can just call me April. I have a PhD in counseling psychology. My whole background is in the field of psychology. I love talking about the intersection of gender and how it just relates to everything that we do, particularly with media and the intersection of media and psychology, media and mental health. My research focused heavily on the influence of rap lyrics on Black women's body image. So yes, I do clinical work on the side, but also just anything with promoting mental health is my bag. But I just also like talking about stuff like this, just even in my spare time. So I guess I don't know if that makes me a nerd. Yeah, I'm a nerd. I'll
Nothing
own
wrong
it.
with being a nerd. Nothing wrong with being a
I'll own
nerd
it.
at all. Nothing wrong. Um, Blur's in the building, by the way.
Hey,
Okay,
hello. Headset and
right, right,
all.
right. Blur's in the building. Okay, so I won't even waste a whole lot of time. I want to get right into this. If you will, because some of us we use colloquial terms, and we've probably heard the term patriarchy.
Yeah.
We throw it around. We see it on the internet. We may not really know what it means, like a sapiosexual. It's one of those
Oh
words you just heard on the
God.
internet a lot.
I hate the
So if
word.
you
Every
would
time
just
I
kind of give us a
hate it.
right.
Hate
So
it.
just
You're
give
right.
us an overview of just basically what is
Yeah.
patriarchy? What is it?
So patriarchy is a social system in which men hold primary power. They predominate in roles of leadership. Basically, I mean, basic bare bones definition is traditions or powers comes through the father. So the other end of that would be a matriarch or a matriarchal society. But when we talk about patriarchy, we're talking about systems or belief or a set of behaviors that are based upon men holding the power and doing whatever it takes to maintain that power and the privilege that comes along with it. So that has to do with being able to control property, how money works, and just all other kind of social contracts associated with that.
So the white supremacy of gender.
Which is why I think it was Panama Jackson that said black men are the white women of black folks. It's so many parallels, and he got ate up,
Yeah.
but shit, he wasn't wrong. But he got
Mm.
ate up for that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So when you were chatting, we were talking about how this
yeah,
system, even though it is set up, I want to specifically focus on black men on this particular thing because
yeah. Me too.
because it's a difference between the overall patriarchal structure. The overall patriarchal structure is also the same structure, at least in our country, as the white supremacist structure. So patriarchy
Yep.
is in that, that kind of intertwined.
Right.
Black men sit in a certain place in that
Mm-hmm.
hierarchical structure. So I want to focus on that. And what were you
Yeah.
saying? You saying that it is harmful?
So yeah, so I was observing some things on Twitter and on Facebook. So the thing about me, I see things in patterns, and part of that has to do with my training. Like that as a therapist, you look for patterns, and so I hear it when I see a pattern or thing. So I was noticing a pattern of behaviors and attitudes. And I was like, I think it's fascinating that black men are finally starting to see how patriarchy is really messing them up or has harmed them, but the frustration seems to be targeted at women. So like bucking back against the whole like why can't we go half on bills, or why am I expected to spend money on you for things, and why am I only valued if I have a certain amount of money in the account? But that frustration is targeted to women. I'm like, hey, we women didn't make this system up. Like what you are actually saying you are frustrated by are things that a patriarchal society has set up. And what, when everybody was raging against feminists and saying what feminism has ruined, that was a strong tenet of feminism, was trying to undo some of those things. So it's like interesting that men, black men in particular, are like, hold up, this ain't working for me. Yeah, because you were never meant for to benefit from that system. Your blackness is going to keep you from benefiting from patriarchy in the same way a white man can. So no matter how much privilege you do get from your malehood, your blackness gonna trump it at some point. So when I say patriarchy ends up hurting men, especially black men, is because they buy into the system, but they can't get the same rewards from it. So the thing,
Go.
so yeah.
Do me one favor. I need to grab something real quick.
Go ahead.
Keep talking. Just give me 1 second.
Okay. So heads up, I got on the gamer headset or my podcast headset because I left my headphones at work. So I'm really leaning into this whole blur thing. But so yeah, so the whole idea that patriarchy hurts men is it puts men in a very small box of what they are allowed to do, how they are allowed to feel, how they are allowed to emote. And anytime you place humans, people period, into very narrow boxes, you are already limiting them. And at some point that's going to lead to distress. So everybody is not going to be a leader. Like even the idea of leadership should come from men. So you tell me based off of genitals, chromosomes, this person is a natural leader. We know that's not true, right? But that system is still set up in place where even as a woman, it is extremely hard to obtain positions of power. But also, if we're saying that men are meant to lead, what happens to that man who's not? Like that's just not in his nature, right? So he's constantly going to be fighting to be something that he is not. Instead of us just having a society where we allow people to bloom into themselves, we are saying, well, as a man, you are supposed to do this. As a woman, you are supposed to do this. Now, what happens is black men in particular, oftentimes their guides of what manhood is, even though they don't want to really admit it, are white men. Like that's what most of us have been exposed to. When you see positions of power, when you see positions of wealth, you see white men. So you try to emulate their behaviors, but again, you don't have the same privileges. You don't have the same access. A few of us might get up there, but that privilege, yeah. And even then, look at what they had to sacrifice to get there.
Yeah, it's a huge gap. Thank you for explaining that piece, man. Quick commercial break. This segment brought to you by Black Girl Magic Riesling.
And I love Riesling.
Yeah. Brought to you by Black Girl Magic Riesling. This is made by the McBride sisters in the great state of California. Y'all can't really get this shipped down there, but if you ever see it in the stores, they've got a full wine line. I've got everything they make. At least 2 bottles of everything they make. So make sure you guys support Black Girl Magic. Also, y'all know I try to support my black-owned alcohols. Also brought to you by Guidance Whiskeys. Please see Deacon Third for that. That will be at the repass. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to get that out there. So in that power structure that black men participate in, but we don't have all the access to. So basically they're saying, hey, when I come put all this responsibility on you that comes with the privilege, because with great privilege comes great responsibility.
Great responsibility, yeah.
Right. So we're saying, okay, that if by chance we're going to continue to participate in this system, then you're going to have to take the responsibilities that come along with the privilege.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I think this is fair. I think that's fair. So what do you let's talk through the privilege part of it, because a lot of black men would say, privilege? What you talking about? Right? Like, what the fucking privilege do I have?
Black men don't have privilege. Yeah. I'm black. How am I supposed to have privilege? Like,
what privilege I got? So talk me through that.
Yeah. So because you have the privilege of manhood, of malehood. So even though you may have the weight of race, you still can lean into the privilege of manhood, whereas black women don't have that. We can't really lean into the ladyhood. We don't get that opportunity, and we don't have the gender power or the race power. But as a man, you still have that piece of privilege. So from everything, so I'll give you a great example. It was even on your post. So you posted about, you shared what somebody said about their observations of all the white women are married 25 and up and all the black women are not. On that post, if you pay attention, look who got the blame for that stat. Even though marriage takes two, typically the way our society is set up, the man has to choose a wife. Notice who took the brunt of that. So that's part of Black male privilege, that when we look at problems in the Black family, or the breakdown of the Black family, or breakdown of the Black community, you have the privilege to not really have any responsibility for that. That at some point is going to come down to what Black women are doing. You have the privilege to have open sexual experiences. You have the privilege to have as many sexual partners as you would like, and not have not have what you call it, the smang club?
Smang gang, man.
Smang gang.
Smang gang.
You have you have the privilege to walk through a group of Black men and feel safe. You have the privilege to go out on a first date, and the only thing you worry about is losing out on $40. You don't have to worry about safety. You're not texting your girlfriend an address just in case something happens to your physical person. That is a privilege. You have the privilege of, even if you are gunned down by state-sanctioned violence or the police, that your name is going to be elevated. Your name will be amplified. No one will forget your name.
True.
It's not a great privilege, but that is still a privilege you have, because we are still in a patriarchal society. Now, because we are still in a racist society, that privilege is only going to take you so far.
Right.
So I think that's the frustration part, is you seeing what other men are being able to get away with and do, and you like, well, where is mine?
You don't
Where's
get to
my
do that.
slice? Yeah,
You don't get to do it. Now, okay. One of the privileges that you named, and I want to just talk about this. And I'm not even. This is not even a pushback. This is just like a personal anecdote.
Yeah.
Okay. Being able to walk through a group of Black men and feel safe. Right. I do, and truth be told, I have that privilege. Not only am I a man, but I'm a pretty big one.
Right.
People don't really
size.
Yeah, I got size.
Yeah.
And so I do appreciate that privilege, and that privilege works for me in a lot of places. You know where it doesn't work for me? Los Angeles, California.
Because they all little, or most of the men little?
Not because they all little, because I'm the odd man out.
Yeah.
So I'm not from here.
Yeah.
And so the scariest question I can ever hear while I'm here, where you from, homie? Fuck, I'm not from here.
Why do all men from LA, their voices are high? Is this something in the water?
I don't know what it is, man.
They all voices sound like Ray J.
They all sound like Ray J.
Everybody from Cali.
All
Voice is like puberty never hit quite. The balls ain't dropped. Sorry,
but I know. Well, I'm not. I don't know the same fit, because I'm not thinking that they're gonna take me out and rape me. But I couldn't even imagine having added that to that particular kind of fear, right? Like, whew, man, like I don't even go out very often out here, because I don't want to be anywhere alone. You know what I'm saying? I don't know these people like that. I'm a long way away from home. And I'm not finna turn my location on for my mama to find. That just seems a little soft. You know what I'm saying? I'm just not finna do that. Yeah. But yeah, so these are pieces of privilege, guys, that a lot of times we don't even, because it's so normal to us to live that way. You may not even recognize it until you're in a situation where you don't have that privilege, and you think to yourself, man, wait, I'm not supposed to have this problem. Right? Like, I'm not supposed to have to be afraid to walk through a group of fellas. What are you talking about? So imagine if this was a part of your everyday life. You get what I'm saying? Like, if this is a part of your everyday life, just in and out every day, you're having that as a problem.
Right.
So that seems like that's the viewpoint that the sisters are saying, okay, this is a privilege. This is a privilege for you. Now, in that privilege, you probably still missing out on the other pieces of white supremacy privilege. Like, you don't really own much. For the
financial piece. That's why all these conversations about high earning and high value, the numbers not adding up. All y'all can't be high.
April, the math, it don't be mathing. When I look at the numbers do not reflect.
It's not adding up.
What y'all saying?
It's not adding up. Everybody, what is it? The wealth gap and all of us ain't six figures unless I'm in the wrong circle. Maybe I just need to expand my circle. But
all y'all make six figures now.
Everybody makes six figures now. Okay, somebody lying.
I can't. All right.
So Ronald said both genders have their own specific privileges and both have their own cons. Yes, but I think we got to be careful. And I read this in a book that where there is no equality, there is no equivalence. Okay. So when you say, well, both genders have privileges, but you can't look at them as if they're equivalent. As a woman, I do have a privilege. I know that if I get pulled over by the police, their first instinct is not to reach for their gun because I'm a woman, right? I'm pretty feminine presenting. However, that doesn't mean the danger is gone, because I also am at a higher risk of being sexually violated by that police officer. Remember Daniel Holtzclaw, the officer who was
Yeah.
going
He was
got
raping women
not
on the job.
on the job,
On the
asking
job.
for sexual favors. And that's not uncommon. That is not an uncommon practice for women, especially Black women, especially poor Black women, to have been propositioned or assaulted during a stop. But because it's not death, because it's not physical violence in the same way as, you know, what we see, I chances are I got to take that story and just go home with it.
Mhm.
So yes, I have privilege. You have privilege, but I won't say that they're equal. That
Right.
and I can still acknowledge that there's, again, like I said, that is a privilege of mine, that when I get pulled over, I'm nervous, but maybe not for the same reason as Sebastian might be nervous.
Right. I
Right.
fart
That don't
every
mean
time I
I'm out
get
the
pulled over.
clear.
Yeah.
You do what?
It give me gas. I get nervous gas every time I get pulled over. I don't know what it is. I'm like, oh God, here it come. Nervous gas. That's what story about me.
Diarrhea will make people not touch you if you
Man,
shit on
I figured the
yourself.
car smell too bad, he won't hang out at the window too long. Let me. It's the defense mechanism. I'm part skunk. It's just a defense mechanism.
Oh God.
Okay, so as we're going through, you know, recognizing, okay, this is a system that does come with. I'm kind of glad Ronald said that. It does have its. It's not like we're saying we live in a system where women are slaves.
Right. Right.
But
Not at all.
definitely a second class citizen.
Right.
Well, maybe a fourth class citizen.
Yeah.
Well, if we count Asian, somewhere down now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
we ain't top two or
yeah,
one
not two
or three. Yeah.
yeah. But so if you're looking at this hierarchy, you might say, oh, well, they have it better than, I don't know, a Muslim immigrant with a towel on their head or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. But the issue is not to compare the struggles per se.
Right.
I don't think
right.
it
we
is
don't want to do that.
It's to try to focus on what can we do to make it better. Now think about what we're saying here, fellas, before we jump out here and say, well, I ain't got that privilege or I ain't got this privilege, da 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 da. What she's saying is the system itself is hurting you, right? Even with all your privilege on this financial piece, you're being expected to do what we saw a white man do. And you think to yourself, you should do, and you don't have access to the teams.
Yeah.
Right. So now you out here spending money on a date and you borrowing money tomorrow. So, right. And if you don't do it, you a broke boy. Right.
Yep.
Because right. So letting go of patriarchy, and I know, and this is a tough thing to say to a bunch of men, but letting go of patriarchy could very well improve not only her quality of life, but your quality of life. Yep. Just consider it. Go ahead, darling. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything you said. Because even like what I'm seeing, again, this came just noticing different patterns of conversation and you know, men pushing back, and you know, we shouldn't pedestalize women, which I didn't even know that was a word, but I'm seeing it often, so it must be coming from the same Reddit sub thread or group that folks are in. Well, yes, women push the broke. Well, I won't say more than men. So women can also buy into, support, and perpetuate patriarchy. So when I talk about patriarchy, that doesn't mean that only men can, same way Black folks can be anti-Black.
White supremacists.
Right. So I don't want to get too caught up on what women and men do it too, because when we do that, we forget the issue of what the problem is, if you want to argue about who do it. So maybe the question should be, why does this stigma even exist? So again, because of patriarchy, the system was set up that men have the power, men have the money. And if that's the case, and as a woman, I have to be totally dependent on a man. So for my survival, I can't be with a broke man. because I will die. My kids will not survive if you're broke. So then my eyes, if we're talking about mating and who's going to be more desirable, is going to be the person with all the goats. It's going to be the person who has money. So then later you now realize that you don't have the same access to the goats. You get mad at me, honey. I didn't create this. Right. So then when I decide to try to step outside of that mold and gain some independence, I'm then shunned on that same thread. And I had to ignore it because I'm trying to do one. Sebastian, you got the patience of Job. Like, I'm really trying to learn from you and your patience, because I don't have it. I'm great in session and I'm in therapy mode. I'm good. But
get off the clock.
Literally every day I'm like, how does he do it? Like, people say the dumbest stuff. And he's so kind and he's so patient and he will talk through. Meanwhile, I'm like, this is stupid. I'm like, April, stop. You can't be that way. But on that post about, women and blah, blah, there were a couple of guys going back and forth about how white women go to college to find a husband and black women go to college to get an education. They were saying it derisively. Like, it's a bad. How dare these women spend six-figure debt and come out with a degree
and get a degree.
Look at white women going and getting husbands. What? And I'm like, am I tripping? Is nobody else reading this? Like, why is that a bad thing? Because we have decided to focus on education and not marriage. Like, what are we not seeing? What this is?
You know what? This brings me to a point, and because remember I kind of mentioned evolutionary psychology.
Yes, you did.
And not necessarily from paleo man, right? But like just how the psyche has to change as the culture evolves.
Yes, or you die.
Right. Or you will not keep up. You will not be able to maintain, what's going on. Right. 2 points here. One, I was looking and I noticed that California lost a House of Representatives seat. New York lost a House of Representatives seat, right? A couple other states. I think Colorado lost a House of Representatives seat. Texas gained one. I think Alabama kept theirs. A couple of Republican states gained seats. A couple of more Democratic states lost seats based on the last census, right? And it hit me, a lot of these states that gained seats, wait, I got to put this with another thing. We're birthing less children. Okay, we're birthing less children. The amount of children that Americans are having. Now, I'm not talking purely black people or white people, just in America, we're having less children. And so you start to see on a larger scale a political jigsaw puzzle being played, and you see that these states that are pushing against women's rights, like in abortion, are gaining House of Representative seats. Right? Not because they're so populous, but because they have a replacement population. Right? So when we play the game, it seems as though like we're playing the game to go get a girlfriend, to get a wife, to get a husband, to ask somebody to pay my bills, or to have a piece of arm candy, or blah, 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 blah. And so when I talk about not having access to the things, I'm not just talking about the paycheck that you make tomorrow.
Right.
I'm talking about the overall ability to construct the system to your whim. Right? Like, people out here really changing laws and changing laws and changing practices and policy to support a system that is built for them. And you don't get to participate in that. Right. You're not getting a chance to participate in that because your children will not get the same educational opportunities. Right. So it would behoove us. Yeah, they playing the game for power, Mark. Like, we're playing the game for prestige or clout, like they playing the game for power. But that we would have more of a collective power if we detached from the game and made a game of our own. You got to evolve. You got to recognize what's going on in your surroundings, not just, well, traditionally speaking, the man's supposed to be. Baby, this ain't that.
It ain't for us. That was never meant for us.
Yeah, like, your life don't work that way. Right. your life works more like this, right? Like we already don't have a whole lot. It would be beneficial for us to try to figure out how do we utilize what we have, right? How do I lay down a piece of this privilege to pick up a piece of strength collectively?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you still probably gonna have to kill the spiders, fellas. It's just what we do, right? She probably still gonna be the person who does the majority of the cooking.
Right.
Not you get what I'm saying? So I'm not saying abandon. And if you think of that as manhood, but okay, whatever. I'm not saying, put your penis down. I'm saying, it may behoove us to start to work in a different social construct to abstract as much power from this collectively as is possible. Does that make sense?
It does. Okay. No. I 100% agree. And I think it would behoove us to start coming up with new solutions and stop playing the blame game on stuff that we know is not true. So you have someone in your comments, Francis Welsing. So I'm not sure if that's their real name or if they're using that in homage to Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, but who stated that the independent woman or the independent Black woman is tearing apart our families. We too smart to still be using that trope. We're too smart. We have access to way too much information to still be pushing the same narrative that has been around since the early 90s. We are pushing narratives of white supremacy. The Moynihan report really messed us up. So tell me how we ignore systemic issues that tear apart Black families. We ignore redlining. We ignore incarceration. We ignore drugs. We ignore economic disparity to lay the burden of tearing apart Black families on Black women. How does that make sense? Because we went to college? Are you kidding me? So if that's the case, if Black women becoming more educated is tearing down the system, what does that tell you about the system? The system can only survive if someone is totally dependent on another. Why are you in support of that system? You've seen how it works. Doesn't feel too well on a race platform, but when it's gender, it's fine. And so you knock Black women for going after things other than marriage. And this is not a knock on marriage, but there is no way that we can believe an institution with a damn near 50% success rate is going to be the saving grace for us.
Really, it's more like 34% success
I ain't checked the stats in some years, so
about
I try
2/3
not
of
to put
people who
stuff
get
out
married
there.
and get divorced. You know what I'm saying? So
how is that the saving? And that's what I was trying to have a conversation with somebody on your post who was like, marrying early leads to more wealth. And I'm like, break this down, because Black folks about a couple of centuries behind in this wealth gap. So please, if
we was
marriage
married
is
for
secure,
a very long time. We was getting married super young.
Right. So this is new. And also all races of women are marrying late. So that's another thing. So someone said in the comments that Farrakhan stated that we mate below the waist and they mate above. Not necessarily. So I think sometimes we like to believe the worst things about Black people. Like Black people the only one. No, white people.
We the only ones. We the only ones.
Races make horrible mating decisions. The difference is that numbers are in their favor. So when they make a mistake, the ripple effect is not as bad. Don't mean that they don't do it. We just don't have the numbers to afford to lose or to the consequences of our decisions around poor mating decisions are felt a little harder because we don't have the infrastructure in place, right? It's not that they don't do it. No. Oh, you think all white folks are strategically planning who they're gonna have? No. One race has a monopoly on that.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, Francis, why is that a problem? Why is there a problem? She said that there is nothing wrong with a woman being educated. The problem is we become educated, start to feel like we don't need a man. So just think about need, and maybe it's a semantics thing. So I'm gonna give you a heads up. I'm big on words. You can't just say I will get caught up in the word. So when we say need, when I think of need, I think of survival. I cannot survive without you. I need water. I need sleep. If I don't have those things, I will die. I don't need a partner. Now that is completely different than make a person feel unwanted and unloved. Two completely different things. Now, when we go back to the issue of wanting to feel needed, if we go to dig a little deeper, the reason why we want to feel needed is because if we think somebody needs us, they're less likely to leave us. If you need me, I can kind of get away with some stuff. I feel more secure in this thing because I know you are dependent on me. Same thing as job. You know who has job security? The one who knows their job is needed, or what their skill set is needed. Right?
Yeah.
Soon as you get some competition, it's like, oh, I got to step it up. I got to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
So this idea that to not need, and again, I'm using need in the sense of how it's defined and not saying want, not appreciate, two completely different things. So yes, Black women are putting themselves in positions where they don't have to be financially dependent on another person. And why is that a threat? Again, we are not asking the right questions.
Let me try to frame this a little bit. If are we talk, I want to make sure I'm asking the right question. When we say the word need, sometimes we say these words again in colloquial terms. That's why I talked about explain to me exactly what is patriarchy. I want to talk about this need. And Francis, let me ask you, because that was one of the things that you put forth. When you say need, what do you mean?
That's a good question. Right? Let's define it.
Yeah, let's try to define that need so that because under your definition, it may be true, right? In the way that you're using the term, it may be true. So let's try to hammer that term down a bit so that we're not just, because I think like Dr. Abel on this. You say a word to me, I'm going to take the word for the word. Need. Right. I do not need anybody, right? Like, no, I really don't. But me, right? Like I need me. I need to stay alive. I need to stay healthy, right? There are some people I really enjoy. There are some people I really hope never to lose. But I'm an autonomous being.
Now, I will say that I'm still waiting on her to define it, that people need people. We are social beings, right? The easiest way to kill off a person is to isolate them, right? Okay. From an evolutionary perspective, but that doesn't only mean romantic need. So I'm not saying we don't need one another for community building, but that's also not limited to race, right? We need people, we need like-minded people, we need. And we've seen that with the pandemic and the quarantine. People have been losing their minds because they haven't been around others. People, so in a sense, people need, people need stimulus and stimuli. But I'm still waiting to hear how she's defining need, or to read how she's defining need.
Yeah, because it is a loaded bag. That's and I want to deal with that, because that's one of those things that we kind of say, kind of like soul ties. Everybody kind of knows what it means, but don't nobody know what it means. You know what I'm saying? Right. So
it means somebody gave you an orgasm for the first time and you ain't never been able to recreate it. You gotta
calm down. Right? You wildin'. So I want to talk about that. You're right. We are social beings, and so in that regard, so I wasn't even using need in that. See, that's why we have to define it, because I wasn't using need in that regard. I'm thinking like, do I need you to do something for me? Right? Like. So I want to dig into what that need is, right? But I'm not saying that. Okay, all right. Let me check. Let me see if I say this. Anything that we do, every cause has an effect, right? Well, I don't think education replaces any man.
I don't think anybody is getting an education to do that.
Right. So this, I don't want to talk about what it's not. I want to talk about what it is.
What it is. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So every cause has an effect, right? It's going to create something new, right? As our women are getting more educated, as they're making more money, the dynamics of things are destined to shift. I say all the time, we look back at our great grandparents and our grandparents and you say, man, they was married for 57 years, blah, 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 blah. Which is true, right? But my great grandma, I think she might have had a second grade education, third grade education, and 11 children. If it didn't work out, where was she gonna go? Right? Like, what were her options there? Who was gonna pay for the lawyer to get the divorce?
Hello.
How was that even a thing? Right? That dynamic would totally change if she had her own. No different than we look at the social media dynamic. People's relationships, the way we relate to human beings, totally changed since the advent of the internet. I can go out to a place and never ask a woman for a number ever again.
Right.
I can literally just ask her, you got Instagram? The way we relate different. You get what I'm saying? The kind of people that I'm able to see, right? Like when I was growing up, the only girls you saw were the girls you went to school with, the girls you went to church with, right? Those are the women that you had access to. Now you have access to a world wide web full of them, right? So the way you make decisions are different. And there's no way to avoid that once something new is introduced. Once it's in your life, it's in your life. So the question is, how do we build? No one's sending women back to the plantation. Right? They're educated now. They're making this kind of money now. And if this is a need, whatever, we still haven't defined that word. But if this is a need, then it becomes important to figure out, how do we continue to satisfy that need even with all of these options, right? I remember when you're growing up, you think, man, one day when I get to be an adult, I'm gonna eat ice cream for breakfast. I'm never eating Brussels sprouts again in my life, right? I don't want to eat this. This shit nasty, right? And then then one day you get that as an option, and then you have to figure out, okay, I need some vegetables. You probably had a day where you ate ice cream for breakfast. Fucked your stomach up. Right. But then you figure out, okay, I need to figure out, how do I still meet these needs while enjoying all my options? Right. I think that's what I'm getting at. What are you saying? Let's go ahead.
Well, I'm still waiting on the definition of need. I really want to get that. I don't think we're going to get it either, which I really want us to stop. Okay, let me rephrase this. Okay. I want us to make sure we have a full grasp on things when we try to purport them as truths or even as our opinions, because these are all opinions. So I'm not here to argue somebody's opinion. You are entitled to that, but you should at least be able to define it so that we can all be on the same page. Because what happens is,
oh, maybe I missed it, Francis. Hold on, let me go back.
Can you copy and paste it? I missed it. I'm sorry.
We were talking.
So because a lot of things that we are saying is true are our belief system. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a hardcore truth. It's a belief system. So if you believe that the cure or for your household is a 2-parent household, 2 kids and a dog, then that's true for you. But then when we say, well, and if you don't do that, then that's the breakdown of the family, then you got to explain it. You got to show me something when you begin to expand. Because I want you to have whatever household you want. But then when you start attaching things to them, and we can point and say that's not really true. So I'm going to go back to something someone said. Single parenthood, single children raised in single parenthood homes are disadvantaged. Yes. Now let's talk about the variables as to why. Because what we tend to do is we oversimplify complicated shit. So the reason why single children or children born into single parent or households are disadvantaged, because the way this country, the way the economy here is set up, is you need a 2-income household at minimum. If you are in a Black household, you might need 3 incomes. It's not the fact that you're unmarried, it's the fact that the economy does not support mothers. It does also when you think of the cost of childcare. So it's not just, so why is single parenthood so hard? Because if you got to go to work, where's your child? The state says your kids got to be in school for at a certain point. So if you work, where are they going? So yes. So I'm a firm believer in community approach. So yes, I would never willingly have a child without another person, because I know the work that it takes to raise a child. But that doesn't mean that single parenthood is the breaking point because of because of whatever. Like, we got to look at all the variables in play here.
Right. Single parenthood gets picked on as if it is the culprit for all of the crimes, and the crime is a conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
And by conspiracy, I don't mean conspiracy theory. I mean, like, it's lots of pieces working together. Let me make sure that. So it's not just that, oh, you're single and you had a kid, your kid's gonna be fucked up.
Yeah.
No.
And how is the breakdown of the Black family keep coming back to Black women only? If we're talking about a family, so we're talking about a dynamic issue, an issue of relationships or dynamics, how is it one half of this is constantly receiving the blame? Ain't no what problem. What other problem do we look at like that? If somebody were to get sick, we're not gonna only focus on one thing. We're gonna look at everything that played a part. So the fact that we can only point out what Black women are doing, the fact that we can only identify, well, look at Black women, they out here having standards and wanting more stuff. That's what no one is questioning why the system is set up in a way that the only way it can survive is one group remains uneducated.
Right.
Something's wrong with your
Right.
system, boo.
If the Black community cannot withstand women being educated, then that means that it is built on lack of education.
It's built on a system of inequality.
Right.
That one person, in order for this to work, I need to maintain all the power. Because as soon as you get a bit of leverage, you trying to leave? You trying to have options out here? That's not going to work.
Right.
So when we talk about go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'm sorry. No. Go ahead.
I'm talking too much. Go ahead.
No. I'm listening. I'm going on. Go ahead.
So when we talk about back in the day, and when the Black family started to break down, look at the introduction of drugs in the community, the prison industrial complex, right? Reaganomics. But y'all want to focus on Black women going to college. You stepped all over those holes and say, yeah, the problem, look at Black women got the nerve to go here and get educated. Now they think they better than us. And again, this is why I like to define when you say need, because no one is justifying disrespecting, looking down your nose at somebody. I would never I know people who make way more than I do, way more. Because I spent a significant part of my life in school, right? So I can't look down my nose at them for not having the same level of education. I look down at my nose at people for being stupid, and I'm trying to work on it. And I need Sebastian to teach some courses, because this is where I know this is a deficit. And I'm holding the hell out of my tongue right now. I'm going to be honest. So with that,
you can learn a lot from a dummy, April. You really can, man.
You're right. But we also make it seem like we the only ones who struggle with this. Like we romanticize, in Africa, they don't, what part of Africa? We the only, no, we're not. Sexism is worldwide. Patriarchy, it ain't just here.
Yeah.
Anytime you have systems set up where you got the haves and the haves not, or people are predicated on like these type of hierarchies, you have these issues. It's not just a US thing.
Right. Okay. Wait, again, I don't want to keep dwelling this, but I want to bring this up one more time. Because I can't define the word need, that makes this question ill-formed. I can't really give an answer to this because I don't know I don't know how you're using the word need. And I look back through the comments and I didn't see a positive definition for it. Okay. So if I could get a working definition for the word need, then I can actually answer that question. And because I don't want to act like I don't want to ignore the question. I appreciate the comment. I appreciate you participating. I'm using need in the sense of that's still very, very subjective, right? Like so I'm gonna need you to define the word. So I need an objective definition, an objective, positively indicative definition. So that like if I say eat, what I mean by that is to metabolize a food source. Then you don't have to use those kinds of words. But that way, anytime I say the word eat, I mean metabolizing a food source, not doing what's good for the body. Because what's good, there's a lot of things that could be good for the body, right? So just something that's positively indicative of the object. Okay. So, I'm not saying that we should separate. Right. I'm saying that if women becoming more educated and financially independent, no, and I want to say this too. Let me say this. Not all Black women are more educated and or financially independent.
Right.
There are. Right, so they are.
Depending on how much education you are, you financially dependent.
I know, right? And keep in mind the math. You got to look at the whole math. We're not making a whole lot of money. Period. Right. So the Black women are the largest and fastest growing group of educated people in America. In other words, out of nowhere, like since the 90s, they just like, oh, we're going to school, right? but keep in mind, before that, they didn't have the opportunities to go to school like that. So as the opportunities grew, they became the fastest growing group attending college. But that's not every one of them. Okay. A lot of, again, not every black woman is making six figures.
Hello.
Right. Okay. But the culture around this need is changing. Right. Okay. Right. She said something about need. I'll say need as in, can we really survive without each other? We damn sure can't reproduce without each other. Okay. All right. So you're talking about, are we purely talking in reproduction? Let me just so I can, let me ask that. And it's not about authority. It's not an appeal to authority by any means. I literally just want to work in definition. Are we purely talking about reproductive things? Because if that's the case, then I can answer this question off rip. Right. Yeah. Like I agree wholeheartedly. In order to make black babies, you're gonna need to have black sex. Hands down.
Well, it depends on how you define blackness, because some people say only one party got to be black. So
okay, well, I mean, at least one person in the situation was black, so it's still technically black sex.
Still black sex.
Yeah.
But that's so limiting. What if I don't want children?
If you don't want children,
I can't? What if I can't?
If you can't have children, right.
What if I miscarry?
Oh my God. Yeah. What if my sperm count low?
Yeah.
Right. So if we're talking purely in order to continue having, racially disambiguous black babies, then we do need to have black sex. Yes. But black sex is not necessarily the topic here. It could overlap in the topic, sure enough. But that's not really, I don't think we're having a problem having black sex.
Or making black babies.
Right. If we're looking at the community en masse, I don't think anybody's saying we're not fucking. Nobody's
We're not doing it within marriage. I think that's the problem.
Okay, well, yeah, we might not, but we never really have been doing it in marriage.
That's new for us.
95% of us, 95% of all Americans have sex before they're married. So that's 19 out of 20 of us. I mean, so it's not like we were coming from this. We talk that purity culture nonsense, but that's not what our culture really looks like.
No, never has.
Right. And it never has. That's just one of those ideals we throw out there. That's not reality. But if we're talking about okay, let me see what you got saying. That's true, Sebastian, but our relationships and households are failing tremendously. Okay. Okay. Let me ask, what do we consider a failure?
Hello.
Yeah. I am the product of a divorced parent. I am a product of a divorced parent. My grandmother was also divorced. Twice. My grandma got 2 divorces. My mom had 3. Right. I am definitely a product of divorces. My family is not a failure, though. My family is a really, really beautiful unit of people. And I know you should know that about me. Like, you should know how much I adore my family, right? And how close knit we are and how much we love each other. Right. Like, right. Like, so my family has not failed at all. That marriage didn't work out.
Right.
Those marriages may not have worked out, but my family is still very much intact. Right.
Okay. So I see where she's going with this. All right. Okay. So for Francis, and the reason I get caught up on semantics is because words mean things. And it's much easier for us all to have a good dialogue when we know what each other mean, what one another mean. Because I say one thing, but if you define it in another way, we having 2 totally different conversations. And I get caught up in words. So I think sometimes people use words the wrong way. So, and also there's a lot of we attach a lot of our own stuff to words. So like the word failing, very subjective. So I can tell for your lens or for this person's lens, marriage is a high value. They see marriage as an accomplishment. That's okay for them. They can do that. But I think it's important that we recognize that's your value system. And if you consider that as an important value, what tends to happen is you kind of singularly point that out as the only indicator of success. And so again, statistically, not just for Black folks, but statistically, marriage has a high fail rate. So yeah, that you setting up the community for failure if this is the only thing you're looking at as an indicator of success. So
But that will also mean that the white community is failing because their divorce rates are
no Black, it's only
better than ours.
It's only us. We the only ones that struggle. But again, our ripple effects are more. So I get that. So I think there needs to be some community and unity work within Black people. Absolutely. I don't think the solution is marriage. I think that's a very short-sighted solution. I believe in healthy, happy, and whole people tend to make better partners. Y'all keep trying to slap the band-aid of marriage on stuff and not even worried about or focusing on how are people doing. So when this whole thing came about, how I said patriarchy is actually hurting men. So not being able to emote, not being able to cry. You know how many grown men I have had in my office, 30, 40, can count on one hand the number of times they've cried. Not being able to say I love you to their parent or to their child, not being able to hug. This is the stuff that we ignore, but we're going to say, but what we need to do is get married more. What? We ain't even addressing the trauma. We're not addressing the fact that we are buying into a system that was never meant for us to survive. And then getting mad at women for being like, all right, well, let me figure a way to figure this out because so yeah.
I think this
somebody said there were no solutions. That's interesting.
Who said there were no solutions? Did I miss that?
That was earlier. A couple people liked it. So someone said there were all these philosophical top debates, but there are no solutions. If you're only looking for them on Facebook, you won't find them. But people have been writing about this for 30, 40 years. So one, you can't solve a thing if you don't acknowledge it exists. We still got to argue. We can't even define what it is or just agree that it's a problem. So what we solving for here? So first we got to acknowledge the extent of the problem, where it started, and then identify what we need to start tearing apart. So one way to fix it is if you are a person of privilege, use your privilege to help a person that does not have it. Advocate, speak up, protect. Use your privilege in a way that is conducive to the community. What's your favorite word, Sebastian? The community.
You know how I feel about the fucking community.
And there is no singular solution, Amber. You are absolutely correct because this problem is multifaceted. It's multi-generational, which is when we say, well, we just need to get married. What? Married and have kids, that's going to fix it? How?
It's too many married folks with kids, and it ain't getting no better. Sometimes I think we romanticize what we did not see. Again, let me take you back to 1920 and let me take you back to 1910 in Birmingham, Alabama. There were Black folk there, married Black folk. Was their life any better than yours? Was their standard of living any better? Was their health care any better than yours? Was their education any better than yours? What part of their life was better than yours? So in other words, would you trade today? Can I disconnect you from the internet right now and put you in a time machine and put you in 1910? Would you trade your life right now for this date in 1910? Or let's make it 1918 when the Spanish flu was going around. Right. Would you trade this science for that science? Would you trade this financial situation for that financial situation? Would you trade, for instance, this is where I think we get to romanticization.
How do we know?
Because we do not know that. We have no implication that was Black folk were still fighting Black folk. Black folk were still killing Black folk. That has always existed.
We were not more unified back then.
This is what I'm getting at, right? There is no way, even when we get to the 50s and 60s, when we start to see Malcolm and Martin weren't the only two fellas out there, right? Right. Those were two of the big popular fellas. But there was always another fella saying, ain't neither one of them niggas right. Democrats and Republicans, they all the same.
Troublemakers, y'all coming down here making trouble.
Y'all coming down here making trouble, right? Okay, so there has never been this one day. Think about this, like, unless you believe that black people had a Tower of Babel moment where we at one point were all speaking the exact same language, and then out of nowhere, black women woke up and said, "Fuck talking that, I'm gonna speak this," right? Okay, that's not how history works. That's not how life works, right? It didn't happen that way. We romanticize that. As a matter of fact, I say this all the time. My grandma would say, man, when I was growing up, or my mama might say, when I was growing up, we didn't even lock the doors. We didn't even have to lock the doors. Craziest piece about that is the crime rate when my mama was a kid was actually way higher than the crime rate when I was a kid, right? They didn't know about as much, they didn't have as much access to as much information, so they didn't see it. But the violent crime rate in the 60s, way higher. Rates way higher. So we say, it was more unified. Show me that in the numbers. Let's go back and look at their life statistically, and then look at our life statistically, and show me how theirs is more unified.
Yeah.
Right.
We have more outlets to show our division.
Yes. Racism
that
ain't
don't
no
mean
worse.
It wasn't there.
Yeah, it's just getting recorded now.
And the thing is, I used to think that. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I used to believe that. Back then we all came together till I did some reading from people who were living back then and who wrote about their experiences and realized, like, oh shoot, they won that much more. People, when Martin Luther King was killed, he was one of the most hated, and not just by white people. Black folks weren't really feeling him at the time. The years leading up to his death, he was not being supported. He went up to Chicago. They looking like, no, sir, you what you thought was the promised land, and that's where that whole, I fear that I have integrated my people into a burning. So, and also this idea of unity. I love the idea of unity, but I think we need to understand that to exist without conflict is not necessarily realistic. So you need to have a good idea of what unity means. So when I think of unity, I'm looking at people who are like-minded, who have similar goals to what I have, who are ready to build with similar ideas. That don't mean every black person to come along with me, because I don't do homophobia, I don't do transphobia, I don't do so. And it's a lot of people who are about building a community who's all about that. Yeah. So if that means I'm divisive because I say I don't want that a part of my black community, then so be it. I will be divisive then.
Right. And Francis, again, again, we spoke of this earlier. I see how important marriage is to you.
Absolutely.
Right? And I by no means want to discount the importance and the sanctity of marriage in your life. Right. But if we look at the grand scheme of things, yes, we were more married back then. True. I'll show you how this works. In 1905, 95% of people who bought houses owned their house. They did not have a mortgage. In 1905, 95% of people who had houses owned them outright. They did not have they did not have mortgages. Only 5% of people held a mortgage. 2020 is the other way around. 5% of people who have houses own them outright. 95% of the people have mortgages, right? Okay. But orders of magnitudes of more people have houses. Am I making sense? Like, hear what I'm saying? There are way more people who have access to the housing market today than had access to the housing market in 1905. So while I may say, well, back in that time, people own their house. Yeah, but I got to look at the whole picture and figure out who owned the house. How many people were house owners at all? What kind of people owned houses? Did your black folk have them at the time? So when I look at marriage statistics, I say, okay, well, yeah, we were more married at the time. And we really still haven't, we're not too unmarried. We probably slipped about, I want to say I think it was in the 60s that we were 50% married. Yeah, I think no, it wasn't even 50% then. I have to look it up again. Don't let me misquote that. I only wanted it. But what I'm saying is, while we have changed that tenet in the community, we have extended our life expectancy. We are far more educated. We have access to way better jobs. I believe that now is a great time. Speaking of solutions, let me get to that part. I believe that right now is a great time to hit the reset button for us, not to go backwards, to figure out where we are now. And because again, I can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I cannot come to April's house and squeeze her degree out her head. Right? She knows what she knows. Right? I can't come. You can't come to my house and put me. You can't come take me out of my house and put me back as a sharecropper. I'm not going back there. I'm not going to do that. Okay. You're not going to give me 11 kids. You're not going to come squeeze my brain and take all my talent away and give me 11 kids on a field. Okay. So the question is, how do we repair at this point, or not even repair? How do we build at this point based on what we have here? Right. So a part of what we got here is, and let me speak as a man. Men are saying, okay, if you want to be independent, or kind of saying, and this is very nuanced, but if you want to be independent, then here, pay your bills. Okay. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this is more talk than it is reality. Got to keep that part in mind. A lot of people like to talk independent, but are very dependent. There's a difference between the independent talking Black woman and a Black woman that is independent. Okay. Most of the Black women I know that are independent speak completely differently about these issues because the reality is completely different. Most Black women I know that are literally independent do not concern themselves with who pays their bills. That's not what they are talking about. Now, what they will say is they don't want to get with a man who can't pay his bills or who's going to come in and be a financial liability, right? But most of the independent Black women that I know are not talking about somebody to come in and pay this bill. Not for real. Those are independent talking folk. A lot of the high value men. There's a difference between the men who actually have a high value and the high value talking men. The men I know who have a high value are never discussing.
They don't have to announce who they are.
They are not talking about what they spent on a date. It never crosses their mind. That's irrelevant to the date. It's irrelevant to the date. What I spent on it is not the point. The point is, what did we do? Did we have a good time? Do I like the person? Don't matter what I spent. Right. So there's a difference between people who actually are these independent and high valued men and women and the folk who talk that. Right. Most of the problem I notice for actual like independent, I don't like to split them up by independent and high value. That sounds gender related. So let me just say the problem that for most of the independent people that I know, men and women, most of the high value people that I know, men and women, is that they are too busy to really build a relationship. And that's men and women. Yeah. That's not a man problem. That's not a woman problem. That's men and women. They are normally so busy doing what they do, either learning what they learning or making what they making or building what they building. If they got kids, raising their kids. If they don't have kids, they're using their excess time to try to enjoy some life. They might be doing a little bit more traveling than some people. Like they're trying to really get in as much of living as is humanly possible. And so it can become a bit difficult to build the regular nuclear family structure.
Yeah.
Right. Now the rest of the folk that's out here talking, it's different. They just doing a bunch of internet capping, and they really do need someone to pay their bills, or they really cannot afford this $100 date.
Yeah.
That's why you hear them complaining about that.
Yep.
And I think we have to be able to look at it that way, so that those that can build are able to build. I mean, I can imagine, April, you seem like a pretty busy woman, right? And you got a job, you do your podcast, you're doing this, that, and the third. I don't know if you date anybody, it ain't really my business. But I can imagine that in that hierarchy of things, I got to eat, I got to sleep, I got to be prepared for my next day, I got to do it. Okay, let me talk to such and such. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a real hierarchy of things because you're not dependent on such and such to make these things happen. You're dependent on you to make those things happen. Right. Same thing for me. I gotta eat, I gotta sleep, I gotta make sure that my house is together, I gotta take out the trash, I gotta do that because I don't have a dependent that's gonna cook for me or clean my clothes or right. So my time is budgeted a lot different. Doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the company.
Absolutely.
Right. Or that I want to just destroy the Black community or whatever. Right. Yeah. I'm so sick of the term destroy the fucking Black community.
You shouldn't be. They ain't never talking about you destroying it.
I just hate the term. Like every goddamn thing, man. Just destroy the community. So
except for the things that actually are.
Except for crack. Crack didn't destroy the community.
There's so many things that we could literally point out that are destroying, like literally tearing the Black family and the community apart. But we
say that again. You broke up a little bit right there. Was that my fault?
Nope, this is me. My internet sucks.
Okay.
So I think I want to echo what you said about marriage. I think marriage is a beautiful thing. I think it's great. My parents have been married more years than I've been alive. Same thing, my grandparents. It wasn't until my grandma died so I have been raised around marriage. And maybe because of my experience in my profession, the rose-tinted glasses got taken off real early for me of what actually makes people happy. And it ain't marriage. Like it's not. That doesn't mean that it's not important, that it cannot be valuable. But if you live your life with that as your ultimate goal, you get there and then now you're dissatisfied. Now what? You get married, all the people in your community get married, but you haven't solved the structural problems. You haven't dealt with the trauma. You haven't addressed the systems that are still tearing down the community. Then what? So again, that's not saying marriage is not important. So when you ask the question, are we okay with dying alone without kids? Why? I'm curious of why you made that leap. How did it go from we're saying marriage is not the singular solution to the problems that we're facing to, so y'all want to die alone without kids? How did we get there?
It's a lot of things in between.
It's so many things in between. And I could, God forbid, I could leave this earth tomorrow. My legacy is already in place. Every place I've been, I have done something.
Shit, April.
I have implemented things that are affecting people positively to this day. As the work that I do leaves a legacy. Literally one of the proudest moments in my life was when a client told me they opened their blinds for the first time in 6 years because they were so afraid of the world outside. So when we talk about legacy, baby, I already have mine. So I'm not waiting on a partner or a child to give me that. Not saying that they won't enhance it, but if I'm putting my all into what someone else can do or is dependent on another person, where is my happiness? So again, when we have happy people, when we have whole people, when we have healthy people, that's how you improve the Black community. We can't just be having shotgun weddings out here thinking that's going to fix it. So again, no one said.
Wait.
Okay. Yeah.
I try my best to be patient, and I'm going to continue.
You are good. I want you to teach a class. I'm serious. You need to do a webinar.
I am not by. Marriage is an arbitrary line set wherein which people make a contract. Okay. Contracts, speaking of legacies, if I died today, God forbid that I should, but if I were to die today, I have done some things in this world that will outlive my children's 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 children. I have done some things in this world. Okay. My legacy, I do not know Dr. Martin Luther King's children as well as I know Dr. King. Right. I do not know Malcolm. Does Malcolm X even have children? I don't even know. Right.
He did.
Okay. I didn't even know that.
One of them, never mind, it's sad.
One of them what?
One of them set fire to the home that killed Betty Shabazz. That is horrible. I don't know why that was the first memory that came up.
Jeez, Louise. Okay.
Or maybe it was a grandchild. Sorry, I think it might have been a grandchild.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, 4 girls because they were on the front row at the funeral.
Wow.
Sorry, I derailed. That's my bad.
Nah. Okay. So, but so when I talk legacy is just what lives beyond you. I am not saying, what I'm saying is marriage is an arbitrary line in which we draw contract. Cool. Can we make that contract work? Yes. Right. But the reason that contract is not working for us right now, and when you get into contracts, if you do contracts on a day-by-day basis, you'll learn this one rule about contracts. Contracts are made to be renegotiated. Right? They are made for renegotiation. There's always an arbitration clause. At some point, we might have to come talk about this again. We might have to talk about the parameters again, because this might not always work out for me. Right? And if I don't want to get rid of I'm saying at this point, we have an old construct, new players in the game. So perhaps marriage is a good thing. Perhaps marriage could be beneficial to us. But under the current system of white supremacy and the patriarchy, it's not working out well for the men nor the women involved, and the black men and black women involved. I cannot speak to an experience that is not my own. But it's not working out well for us. This needs to be renegotiated, and it needs to be renegotiated with our current realities involved, right? With our current realities. How do I marry an educated black woman? How do I marry a successful black man? How do I marry an uneducated black woman? How do I marry an unsuccessful black man? Right? Because again, we're talking as if all of a sudden we just got rich out of nowhere, and now all of a sudden we still broke.
We still broke. Like, what are we talking about here? We still ain't got it.
Yeah, we ain't got it, right? So how do we rework this system? And in order to really do that, one of the things that happens, you know, a lot of times, speaking of privilege, you'll go to your job and you'll find out that the white man that's sitting next to you make more money than you doing the same job. One of the reasons that happen, racism is a piece of that. But one of the main pieces of racism that keep us from making that kind of money, part of it's purely systematic. Don't get it twisted. A lot of us don't even go in and negotiate salaries. You didn't know you could do that.
Yep.
You didn't know that was an option. So they said, well, the starting pay is, and you said, okay. Right? You didn't know that you could have negotiated that. You just didn't know that. I know so many folk that happened to, they was like, this person made more money than me doing this. You know why? Because they said they needed more money to do that. You didn't do that. You were scared you was going to not get the job. So you took what they gave you.
Yep.
Okay. Negotiation is really important. Right? But in order to really truthfully negotiate, here's where I think the healing part comes in. You got to be able to put out on the table what it is that I need. What do I have? And what do I really need? For example, you can't do a whole bunch of boss talking about your money game, and your money game ain't that.
That's why I don't do it.
You don't do that. Like, tell me what it really is so we can really deal in what, because it may be unfair of me to, or a woman, I should say. It may be unfair of a woman to require that you take her to places that cost $150 every week. That may not be tenable for you. That don't mean you're not a good man. That don't mean you're not a great human being. That don't mean you can't love her the way she needs to be loved. She might just have a different impression of what you got. Right? And she may say, I only want to date men who can afford that. Fair enough, right? But if we put out on the table, baby, let's talk about who really can afford this. It's only about 10 of them. They all married, or they live out of LA and they don't want to be married.
Or they not dating you as a
They
black
not dating you,
woman.
right? So let's be realistic, right? Realism will help us get it together, right? So if we come out and say, okay, you either gonna be one of the many, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to be, right? You either gonna be one of the flock, or they already got they one, or they not looking for one, right? In a numbers game. Or you could mess around and find you one, but it ain't many of them out here, right? Again, it ain't many people who can really afford to live the life that you really want to live. That's how capitalism works. Same thing for men, right? Talk in realism. A lot of black men, we talk about black women not getting married, but let's keep it a buck and a half. Niggas ain't really trying to get married like that. I don't know too many men who had their proposals turned down. Do y'all know a lot of men like that? Maybe I only know the men I know. So have y'all heard of a rash of men proposing to women and them telling them, no, I got a degree? I ain't heard that. Again, I live in a small corner. Have you heard of Dr. April?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. So when we talk about marriage numbers, I've never heard any woman say, yeah, he proposed to me to marry me, but I was like, fuck that nigga. I got a whole degree. I don't need no nigga in my life.
You know how many degrees keeping me warm at night? I don't need him.
I don't need that. My degrees take out my trash. My degree, baby, I took my degree to the family reunion.
Yeah, my degree checked the tread on my tires.
Yeah, degree changed my oil this morning. Just this morning, my degree did that. So if we're talking realistically speaking, right? And you know, we have these tropes that we keep saying, but they don't necessarily align with the reality. So it's not like men just out here trying to get married on a day. But I've never heard of a woman turning a man down because she had a degree or because she was too independent to say yes. I've never heard this. I've never heard a man propose to a woman and she go, marriage? I'm an independent woman. Unless they just not posting it on Facebook or something. Like maybe this is happening en masse and it's just not making it to my side of the internet. But I feel like TikTok would blow up if that happened. I feel like the World Wide Web would see this. Okay. This being said, being more realistic, there is a reason that we're marrying later or choosing not to marry at all. If we're trying to save the institution of marriage, then we've got to be able to adapt that institution to our realities. Right. And our realities is my wife is probably not going to cook and clean. Okay. I'm gonna bring this back to you because I've been talking for so long, but my reality
we keep coming back to this. We keep coming back to this
because it's so important. Clearly, this is important in somebody's life.
It's important, but I feel like I think somebody was it Lori? Somebody mentioned like we're conflating two different things. So we are conflating the definition of need. I think we've established that we are all defining need in a different way. I think Sebastian and I are looking at need as a survival, like I literally cannot exist without you. Whereas initially you said need was for reproduction purposes. Mm-hmm. So if a woman is acting as if she doesn't need her, so there's a difference between being disrespectful, disregarding, making somebody feel like you don't have to have a degree to do that. There's women who don't have degrees and jobs who talk crazy to men. But if your belief system is aligned to where you think women with degrees, they act like, then that's what you're going to pay attention to. Because for every woman that you know who has made a man feel less than because of his lack of education, there is one who did not. But your confirmation bias is only going to focus on the thing that you already believe to be true. Now, and maybe because I personally, and this is anecdotal, so it's not statistical, don't know too many men where that has been the general case for them.
I ain't never, and I know I realize that my life is weird, Dr. But I've never seen that happen. Now, it's one thing for somebody to say, okay, let me try to put this in a fair case. If I try to use my financial situation as a leverage point to get Dr. April to bend to my wishes, right? If I was like, well, you ain't gonna never find a man that make money like me that's gonna do for you what I do. And she said, well, nigga, I don't need you to do any of that because I could do that. I could totally understand it. That I could see that sentence being said. Or if it's got to be based on some kind of leverage point. But I've dated women with PhDs, doctors. I've dated waitresses. None of them cared about what they did for a living. It's just what they did for a living. They cared, could I have a conversation? I've dated, again, I do not have a PhD. Do not. They never said, well, you don't have a PhD. We can't. And this is before I started making money. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was poor. I dated doctors poor.
Yeah.
It was about, could you have a conversation? Are you a good person? Right. And again, maybe that's just my little anecdote, but I got to count my anecdote as something. My anecdote would count in the statistics. Right. So I don't think as though, but for instance, again, this is before I had any money. Like the first doctor I dated, I met her wearing footed pajamas in a club. This is a true statement. I zip up footed onesie in a club, right? I didn't have any money, but I was me. I got this smile and I could have a conversation, right? I literally was driving a beat up. Once she saw she came to my house. I was literally not my house. I was living in the back of a shoe store in between rows of shoes. This is a true statement. But I never asked her to buy me a thing. Never asked to borrow $1. When we went out, I still paid for it.
Yeah.
Right. That was just a pride thing. That was a pride thing on me because I wasn't gonna do that. Right.
Yeah.
But she didn't mess with me because and this was a whole ass pharmacist, like a doctor of pharmacy, not just like like a doctor of, I don't know, basket weaver. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like this lady was real doctor, right? So I haven't seen that. I have never seen that. I had my own ambitions. I had my own drive. I had my own goals. At the time, I was skint up though, right? Mm. So I feel as though we have to start to adjust. Like life just doesn't work according to the sayings.
We keep coming. Maybe you got to come on because I keep missing.
Francis, would you like to come join us? Yeah, let me. Would you like to come join us? Let me do this.
Because
tell him.
Well, because all right, I keep saying we're conflating. Saying you don't need someone is not inherently an insult. I have had someone that I dated say, I don't need you because they didn't. And that should not have hurt my feelings. And it did not, because they did not need me. They wanted me there.
Talk about that. Where's Asia?
Women going around saying, and first of all, who are these women going around? Are you talking about on Twitter? Because I'm going to be honest, these are not the conversations my girlfriends, like we don't just have brunch and be like, you know what I don't need right now? A man.
A nigga.
So I think we got to be careful.
I need one more mimosa and no men. One more mimosa, keep the men. No men.
Can you bring my guacamole, but no niggas? So
no niggas. I don't want that. You put that on the chips? No, don't put that on mine.
So again, there's agents. So I don't think it's insulting to say that women don't need men. In the same way, men can say, but if you are looking at need as saying, I don't want, I don't desire, I don't respect, I don't, then yeah, because now you are adding a whole, that's why I kept saying define.
Find the
And when
word
you
need.
defined it, you spoke about reproduction. But that
Right.
ain't what we're talking about right now. That's
all.
why I get caught up on semantics, because we were on one page where we both agree. If you're talking about that, then yeah, we do need one another.
We need each other. Right.
But
I used to tell Age all the time, I don't want you to ever need me. I don't want to need you. I want you to want me. Right. And I want to want you. Right. Because if you need me, I ain't doing something right.
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 And that doesn't mean you treat a person as if they're expendable. So I feel like that's why I said like conflating, because if you're saying educated women go around acting like disrespect,
they don't like boys,
then the problem ain't education. The problem ain't them being educated, it's their attitude. But so why are you focusing on the fact that they're educated? They probably did that when they was making $7.25 at Dollar General. That's a character issue. But because we believe, we have bought into this idea that Black women are the reason why the Black household is failing, you bought into that. Instead of, that's what I'm saying, if we don't address the real issue, and I think somebody on here said, Anelda, we're going to just repeat the same pattern. And that's why when I said patriarchy also hurt men at the end, because they get caught up in this system too. The whole argument around, I don't know if it's been on your timeline, but there was a whole thing about paying. I think the game said, any woman he deal with ain't ever got to worry about paying anything. What I look like being a man and my woman paying half. Now, here's the thing. And I know I might be in a minority with women on this. I never expected to get married and not pay bills. Ever. And maybe because of the household I grew with, both of my parents worked. Now, they may not have been evenly contributing to the bills, but I never thought that was a thing until I got older and started. And also because I know that some of the 3 marriage killers, time, sex, and money. And I understand how the economy works, where you need a 2-income household unless somebody is making 6 figures. And again, statistically, that's probably not going to be the case if I'm going to get married. If my man believes in that idea that he is supposed to be the head of the household and he's supposed to take care of bills, guess what he's going to do? He's going to run himself in the ground trying to do that, instead of just saying, hey, now, you know what? That's set up. No time.
Y'all probably not going to have no sex because you ain't got the time.
Yeah.
I've been drinking. So this is a Riesling statement. A moment of self-introspection. Okay. I probably would have been married. Dr. Scott, I probably would have been married by now. Mm-hmm. But one of the reasons that I'm not married is because I did not have any time. Because I did not have any money. And even once I started to make money, it wasn't enough money. Right. My focus since I was a young kid, I wanted to make some money, man. And it wasn't, I just wanted to have some money, man. I like sitting around in Versace robes. I like that shit. Right. It's just my thing. And I spent so much time trying to go get money and have a lot of time. Right. My desire to get money took me away from home. It took me around the world, which it's been a blessing. Don't get me twisted. It's shown me things I would have never seen had I gotten married early. But that's one of the reasons why I don't have any, why I'm not married. Right. And when I think, like my mother and father were married, they're divorced now. My mother and father were married. They were 2 working people. My daddy really did pay all the major bills in the house. Right. So my daddy paid the mortgage. My daddy paid the insurances and stuff like that. So all the major bills my daddy took care of. My mama actually made more money than my dad though. Right. That was just one of his things. But because that was one of his things, my daddy wasn't really around.
It's a trade-off.
Right. Like he just went, like, in order for him to be able to afford where we was living, and my daddy spent a lot of time working revolving shifts, and then my dad is a hyper religious man, so God came first, right? So the only time I really did see my daddy was at church, right? And when he was at home, he was probably asleep or fussing about some shit that needed to be done so he could go to sleep, right? Reality. At some point, you have to try to figure out the balance of utility and usefulness. And I think sometimes we think of them as the same thing. There are a lot of things that don't have a whole lot of utility that get a whole lot of use. Time is one of those things. Might not be the most, it might not have a whole lot of utility, right? We're just sitting around doing nothing. This is not productive, right? We're just going to sit around and talk and shoot the shit and catch up and look at each other's face for a while. Right. And it took me a long time to even put that as a thing in my brain. Practical me. Are we doing anything? Do you need anything? Anybody who's ever dated me knows my favorite question is, do you need something? Can I help you with something?
That's a great question.
Can I help you with something? Because I don't want to small talk. But the trade-off for the utility sometimes is you miss the things that are useful. Right. So when as we're coming together to try to figure out, okay, what's our new balance of utility and usefulness? Again, most of the educated women I know that's making money, what they are really asking for, really, in my experience now, again, this is anecdotal, so don't, if you say it's different, I can respect that. But what they're really asking for is something useful. They're covering their own utility. They're just looking for someone that's useful. I got the utility. There may be some utilities that we share. Like she may really ask you to get an oil changed. But that's just one of those, like, I don't know. That's a gender role thing. She just don't really want to think about changing the oil. And she know you might think more about cars than her. You know what I'm saying?
And they're not going to try you when you go, like they try me every time I go to the dealership. It's a little easier
change
your oil. They got to sell me brakes when I go.
Oh, they're going to try to at least sell me some windshield wipers. They're going to try that. Crazy part is I probably need the windshield wipers. So I ain't going to even hold you.
I had a whole rant about getting my oil changed.
Anyway. But I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think we got to find that place, that sweet spot in between utility and usefulness. If women are out here saying, I don't need no man because I make my own money, which could totally be said, a lot of that should be hyperbole though.
Because you don't have to announce it. What's understood ain't got to be explained. Is that cool? Like,
it got to be explained.
You don't have to or a lot of times I think sometimes those announcements are made in response to other stuff. So it's a little bit of a bravado thing usually the times. Because even like this conversation around I don't need you, I can only think of one time that came up in the conversation because we was actually having a discussion about something, a little bit of an argument. But I don't generally go around telling the man I'm dating I don't need you because I know how that can sound. I know how that can sound. Now, if you explicitly ask, then I'm going to give you the answer if you ask. But I'm not going to say that because I know what most people hear when they say that. And I know you got to have a level of maturity to understand that doesn't mean that I don't desire you or cherish you or value you. But if you walk out this door, I'm going to be okay. I might cry for a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, but I'm going to get back up again. So, but I still want you here.
I'm going to shut up. But when you leave, I'm going to be talking again.
Right. And that is, I remember as a kid, I was an old soul. I've always been an old soul, and I've always been very abstract when I was a kid. Like I just saw things for like what they were and questioned a lot of stuff. And what I told myself as a kid, and I was like, I don't ever want to have so much invested in a person that if they die, if they leave, that I'm destitute, that I don't know, I've lost my direction, right? I don't ever want that. That doesn't mean I don't want to love somebody, but I don't ever want to be in a position where my survival is based off the existence of another person. My happiness is based off the existence of another person. And I think for so many people, that's what marriage represents. They see themselves as incomplete. They see themselves as lacking. And the only way they get this wholeness is by being partnered with someone. That doesn't mean I don't value marriage or relationships. I value healthy happiness and wholeness. And if that comes attached with a nice 6'2", chiseled, dark-skinned black man, hey, come on. I'm all for it. But if it don't,
by the way, I'm 6 foot and I ain't that chiseled. But I am dark skinned.
You can
black man.
sing. Listen,
Yeah.
singers are the most Let me tell you about artists. That's a whole
That's a
nother
whole other, yeah, that's a whole other
because that
ballpark.
is my vice.
Yeah,
Artists.
yeah.
Horrible.
We're good
Horrible.
people, man.
No, y'all not.
We
Y'all are great
okay.
people. Y'all are
We
horrible
trash.
partners.
Okay,
Horrible
we trash.
partners.
Okay, trash.
Lovely people. Awesome. Great
Trash.
friends. But as a partner,
Trash.
run.
Trash.
Run.
Yeah, I get
Run.
I get
Yeah.
I fuck with
So
it.
it's so funny though how we keep coming back to the same they view marriage as a source of validation. And it again, we're talking about 50% success rate, y'all. What else would we have with that level of success would we put as a marker of what you want? If you were going to have surgery and they told you, hey, this particular procedure got like a 60% rate
Look
of
at this
failing.
nigga here, man. Look at this nigga, man.
Trash money.
Hey, bro. Hey, you can't use my own lingo against me. I taught you about Trash Money Records. Don't try
That is
to
hilarious.
trash, man.
I want everyone to find love. And if
Yeah,
marriage is what they want, I want them to find it. But I'm not going to put because everybody don't need to be married. That's the
facts,
reality. Some people are not good husbands and don't make good wives. And the worst thing that they need to do is partner with somebody. So, but that doesn't mean that the Black community is destitute. So when somebody kept saying, single parenthood. The reason why children need both parents is because our economy, our world is not set up for one parent to successfully raise a child. That's if a parent die. Somebody mentioned deployment. Children need community. Children need support. That doesn't have to be only limited to mother and father, ideally, because you participated in creating that child, so you do need to have a significant level of involvement. But if we say, well, that's why they're disadvantaged because the dad's not in the home, well, let's look at why. Again, there are some
Yeah.
policies or things set in place to why it's difficult. But if
Yeah.
we had a community mindset, that child's not slipping through the cracks. You know, you can join the PTA and not have a child in the school.
Absolutely.
How many of us are members of a PTA that
I am
are
not. I ain't gonna even hold
right? So we can't be out here talking about what's breaking down the community and we not even stepping up in the ways that we can. The village, yes, that village can look like so many. Your daddy might not be there, but I bet you had an uncle around that stepped in. So we can't be so limited and short-sighted. And that doesn't mean that I'm out here advocating that no Black people get married. What I'm saying is there are multiple paths to the stuff that we are trying to achieve.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna let this go. I'm gonna give you the final word. But first of all, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking your time to come talk to me. This has been a very productive conversation. I
Thanks
appreciate
for
that.
the invite.
Man, that's really
No, Francis, I don't want you to feel jumped. I don't want you to feel jumped. I appreciate you sharing your perspective and giving us something to discuss. But I hope you don't feel jumped.
None of this is don't take any of this as the word of God, right? These are just perspectives. These are just right. That again, I want to say this again. Whatever it is that you believe that you want for your life and for those around,
go for it.
Yeah,
please.
One of the things that I'm learning, like I spent a lot of time in this quarantine, reading science, reading and listening to science lectures. That sounds boring, but it's been the most fascinating thing to me. And one of the things that I've learned about evolution is not always for the better. It's just for the survival.
For survival.
Right? For survival. And sometimes in evolution, you have to repurpose things, right? So you'll have something in your body that it may not serve that purpose anymore, but we repurpose it to do something else. The vestigial organ, like your tailbone. We actually used to have tails. We don't have tails anymore. We don't need them anymore, right? But we still have a tailbone, and we repurpose that tailbone to do something else for us, right? And I think that these kinds of things, being able to repurpose the things that exist to help us to continue to survive, instead of just pointing to it and saying, it's not that anymore, right? It's not that anymore, you know? And it may never go back to being that.
Right.
Right. I don't see it going back. I don't see it going back. But that's not to say throw the thing away. That's saying in order for us to survive at this point, we've got to learn how to repurpose the thing to use it to our best benefit right now. And this is true about our relationships. So we have to get a different mindset about like the necessity of man and woman at this point, or Black man and Black woman at this point. is completely different than 100 years ago.
Right.
Why we need each other is completely different.
Right.
Completely different. What we're requiring of each other is completely different because our surroundings are completely different. Okay. I just wanted to say that. April, you got anything else you want to say?
Yeah. So you can follow me on social media. Instagram. My Instagram tag is below. I also have a Facebook page. Dr. April Scott. So I do chats. I'm going to start back on in next month. I do Sunday 4 at 4, where I cover various mental health topic that I think is important to the community or just to everybody. On various things so if you go on there now, I did a session on mom guilt, imposter syndrome, understanding the difference between depression and sadness. All of those videos are on my IG page. You can find it on IGTV. So yeah, this was good. I enjoyed this conversation. So whatever we got to do to get free, I think is important, and define that for yourself of what it looks like for you to be free and be comfortable with stepping outside of a box that somebody put you in.
Yeah. Because when it's all said and done, it doesn't have to look. It doesn't have to look the way it looked. It's just got to work.
Yeah.
Right? And the Black family is definitely one of those things. It may not look like it used to look. But what's most important to me is that it works, right? The community that we're trying to build has to work, and it has to work for as many people as is possible, right? Yeah. I define good as that which benefits the most and hurts the least.
There you go.
Right.
That's it.
So I want to benefit as many people as I possibly can, and people are walking in different ways of life now. Not everybody needs to be married. My God, that doesn't make you a bad person. You could be a great woman and a great mother and a horrible wife. You could be a great man and a great husband and a horrible father. Figure out what you're best at, right? Operate in those things and quit. Let's not push people into situations that may or may not be beneficial for them. I thank all y'all, man, for coming on. Just as
can I say one more thing?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I can only see individual therapy clients if you are a resident in the state of South Carolina. That's just how insurance and laws go. However, please follow me on channels. I'll be launching some series soon so we can continue conversations like this. So just stay tuned.
Yes, and just because I'm silly and I hadn't listened to this song enough today. I'm gonna end this with my good friend Linda Gibson. Let's just rock it.
Oh, wait, what is this?
You don't know this?
I thought it was you're going to play Look at the Coons.
It's been with me too long.
What is this?
Oh, just come on.
It's took me through many rivers,
through
many deserts, down into too many valleys. So I've got
it.
She got the monkey symbols. That's the monkey. That's the Chuck E. Cheese symbols.
Got it in the morning and I got it at night. I got it. Got it on my knees and I got it here. Oh, I got it. Now this thing keeps me day by day. Oh, I got it. And I don't need to know about another way.
Wait, yeah.
It's the Holy Ghost and fire. Up around power.
Oh.
I talked in tongues.
Yes.
Got in my mouth and it didn't tangle.
That's just because I love y'all. Get it, Linda. Look at my man right there on the left. Kill him. Thank y'all, man. I appreciate y'all. I'm out the way, man. God, I love it. I absolutely love that.